Now, how about this idea of babies learning to read before they learn to walk? Well, American educator Dr. Robert Titzer says there's a natural window of opportunity when a child is young to develop the brain, and we shouldn't ignore that window of opportunity. Well, he's developed a program through DVDs and flashcards, which many parents do swear by around the world. Some educators criticise it, saying it's way too early to be teaching little babies. Well, Dr. Titzer has taken the program around the world, and he's here in Australia offering workshops in infant learning, and he's in our studio in Brisbane. Hi, Doctor.
Hi, Tim. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, when we're talking about teaching little babies, we are talking about little babies, aren't we?
Yes, actually, as soon as they have visual tracking, which is the ability of a baby to follow moving objects, and they generally have that between 2 and 3 months of age, then you can start showing them the language.
Wow. So showing them language or words?
Well, it's actually language, and that's an interesting question. What a lot of people call sign language is generally sign words. A lot of the parents have figured out that the babies can learn sign words. The difference between words and language would be language is richer and includes transitions between words and not just a series of words. So there are patterns in a language, and individual words wouldn't reveal the pattern.
Now, this is something you've been doing for a very long time, and you discovered this was possible with your daughter, didn't you?
Yes. 17 years ago, I was studying infant development at Indiana University, and at the same time I was dropping my own baby off at the babysitter's house. And I'm a very anti-television person for babies and toddlers, so I did not want her to watch mindless TV shows or even Sesame Street, which was the best educational program in the U.S. at the time, and many people think it still is. I did not think that that show was appropriate for her, so I made a multi-sensory interactive video that would teach her language skills when the babysitter was busy or when we would be busy.
I guess most parents would assume that at that age, a child or a baby watching television would only be looking at the pictures and the shapes and the colours, but not so.
Actually, they love words, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, if you have a 3-month-old baby or even a 2-year-old, they have tens of thousands of new synapses or brain connections forming every single second. So, for instance, if the baby would see the word nose and hear the word nose simultaneously, then many of those connections would go from what the word looks like to what the word sounds like. So with no effort on the child's part, they just figure out that that's the word nose, and then eventually they figure out that the N makes the N sound, and so on. So then they learn to read words they've never seen before. So obviously they can't talk at that age, but they will identify the body part from the word, yes? Yes, just by holding up the word, then as soon as the baby figures out how to touch his or her nose, even if they can't say it, when you hold up the word, then the baby can touch their nose, or if they see the word on the video, they can touch their nose. Now, if they learn something like that at that very tender age, obviously the question is, will that stay with them when they're 3, 4, 5 years old? Yes, and it's just like talking to the baby, and there are studies on this. There was a landmark study in the 1980s showing that how many words a child knows later in life was based on how many words were spoken to the child as a baby early on. It was not based on the parent's IQ. It was not based on the parent's socioeconomic status. It was not even based on the child's IQ. The number of words that the child knew was based on how many words that were spoken to the baby early in life. What do you say to the educators who would say to you, and there'd be many, I'm sure, over the years, that it's way too early to be teaching that sort of thing? I think that most of the people who would think that are looking at reading as a difficult skill. And it does become a difficult skill the longer you wait. But I'm not looking at it that way at all. I'm just looking at it as the babies are allowed to see the language. So instead of thinking of reading as a difficult skill, think of it as a natural part of language. It's the written form of language. If you allow the babies to hear language, we know that all children learn language. Yes. If you allow the babies to see the language, then all babies virtually who have ever been born could learn the written form just as naturally as the spoken form. And there are long-term studies showing the earlier the child is taught to read, not only the better the child reads, but also the more likely the child actually enjoys reading.
Okay. Now, I'm interested as to why you've got a problem with programs which was highly successful, of course. I'm assuming it's still around, like Sesame Street.
Well, for a baby, the baby has tens of thousands of new brain connections forming every single second. What the baby sees should match what the baby hears. And if you watch programs like Sesame Street and Dora the Explorer and all these other programs, oftentimes they'll be talking about things, but they're not showing images that match directly. And that's just not a good idea with a little baby when they have this very short window of opportunity for learning language. What they see should match what they hear. In most baby videos, that does not happen.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of programs of ours, but there have been international too, like the Wiggles and High Five, those sort of things. Are they not beneficial simply because of the fun element for babies?
Well, no, actually babies love our videos, and they're very fun. So the fun part is a positive. But it's the actual content that I am concerned about.
Okay, all right.
I would not recommend talking to babies in baby talk because that's what they learn. So actually how parents should talk to their baby is using what's called parentese, where they talk in a higher pitched voice. They slightly over enunciate and elongate the vowel sound. So I'll demonstrate. I'm holding a cup. The cup is above my head. If you talk like that to a baby in that higher pitched voice and slightly elongate the vowel sounds, you'll see that they'll pay very careful attention to what you're saying. And I often give talks where there are hundreds or sometimes even thousands of babies in the audience. And before I talk like that, the babies will be crying, making all sorts of sounds. And then whenever I talk like that, the babies will get quiet and they will look for my voice.
So on the DVDs, there is that sort of language, obviously supported by the pictures.
Exactly. So it's a fun, natural way of learning written language. And I know people assume, oh, there must be something negative to it. There's nothing negative to learning to talk.
Oh, absolutely not.
And the same is true with reading.
So therefore, it's beneficial later in life. When I say later in life, only 2 or 3 years later.
Yes, that's correct. There are long-term studies showing the earlier the child is taught to read, the better the child reads, and the more likely the child will actually enjoy reading.
Yeah. Man, what a fascinating life you have. A lifetime of looking after little babies must be a lovely way to live.
Yes, it is. And I'm very, very fortunate that I get to travel a lot as well. In Singapore, over half of the babies are using the Your Baby Can Read videos.
Yeah. Your Baby Can Read, it's called. Thanks for your time.
Yes. Thank you very much, Tom.
Great to talk to you. Dr. Robert Titzer in our studio in Brisbane. Fascinating stuff. So there you go, at a couple of months of age. And they can read. Is it too soon? I don't know about all of that. 1:27.